Good morning, everyone. This is Beth Schlachter. I'm Executive Director here at FP 2020, and thank you for taking the time to join us on this webinar this morning to learn more about our expert advisory community. So I want to let you know what our agenda will be for the next hour, and then we'll move through that and leave some time for Q&A at the end. So first of all, by way of introduction, I just wanted to say that the EAC we see as an important new way for all of us to work together to mobilize the incredible expertise and technical assistance within our community, as well as to create a new channel of communication that will help us to better share and communicate about the FP 2020 activities, both at the Secretariat and the country level, in support of both country-level activities and all of our global efforts. During our time today, we'll be discussing the new FP 2020 strategy and structure because, as many of you know, we underwent a strategic review last year and have significantly changed our operational model. We'll also be looking at the vision for the EAC and the next steps for setting up this group, and we'll be answering your questions and gathering your feedback. But before we continue, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Rati to cover a few housekeeping points for the webinar.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In terms of a few housekeeping rules, for those of you who are not in the web room, you have just received a PowerPoint presentation, so you can follow along the slide if you're on the phone only. If you have also been muted for the duration of the call because of the number of attendees that we have on the line to avoid feedback. If you have any questions during the webinar or during the Q&A session, please submit them in the chat feature or the Q&A feature that you see on the right column of your screen. If you are joined only on the phone, please email Sarah Meyerhoff your questions or any technical issues you face. That's S. Meyerhoff, so SMEYERHOFF at familyplanning2020.org. She's also in the invite that you received for this webinar. Also, a quick reminder, this presentation is being recorded and will be circulated after. Thank you.
Thank you, Rati. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, some of you have heard about the operational changes here at FP 2020, but not everybody is as familiar, so we wanted to just take a couple of minutes to introduce what the outcome of our strategic review has been and what our current operating model entails. So with that, just a bit of history that as of July 2015, we measure progress from July to July every year in recognition of our anniversary of the London Summit on Family Planning from 2012. So as of last July, there were 290 million women and girls using contraception across FP 2020's 69 focus countries. And that demonstrates an increase of 24.4 million more women and girls than when FP 2020 was launched in July of 2012. So this is an unprecedented number, and it clearly builds on the enormous effort of the family planning community over the last half century in terms of providing that groundwork, that framework for expanding access. So it's a real accomplishment by the community of not only looking at the work that's there, but recognizing an opportunity by working together to do even more in order to increase access for more of the women and girls who want to control their reproductive lives but have lacked access or the capacity to do so in the past. So even though we've made this incredible progress, if we're looking at the FP 2020 goal of reaching an additional 120 million women and girls by the year 2020, we have benchmarks to measure our progress toward that goal. And as of last July, we'd fallen short by about 10 million toward that point in progress that we were hoping to have attained by that time. So as a result of that, and also because, FP 2020 at that point had existed for 3 years, so we'd learned a lot. We had some experience working with our working groups and our reference group to see what had been achieved. We were asked by our reference group to do our strategic review to assess why we had not made the progress that we had hoped to make, and also to review whether the the structure that we had here at FP 2020 was the most effective operating model to help support the community to move toward that goal. So as a result of the strategic review, it was determined that we would be moving from having a 4 working group structure to really prioritizing 4 cross-cutting initiatives. So we're going to be focusing now on working to support countries more directly. We'll be maintaining a focus on data and performance management. Global advocacy, rights, and youth are key issues across the spectrum of our activities, and we will continue to work at the global level to do all we can to ensure that family planning is appropriately placed and considered within global level discussions and activities, including throughout the UN. But we'll also be working with the advocacy community at the country level and again through global networks to ensure that we're doing all we can to make sure that rights-based quality family planning programs are at the base of all of our efforts as we move toward expanding access for the additional 120 million women and girls. What's been quite clear throughout the strategic review and throughout all of our processes that while we're focused on trying to expand access, we really think that it's how we get there that's going to matter. And that if we get to an additional 120 million women and girls, but it's not with high quality rights-based programming, then that will be a massive missed opportunity. So we have a new initiative that's focused more explicitly on that as well, and toward engaging with the youth networks and the youth community that are already up and running, and bringing that perspective of youth both to our activities and creating an opportunity for two-way communication with those networks. So we're very excited about that. We'll also continue to be a place where you can come for knowledge and information for sharing both what we're learning through our processes, but also sort of pulling together information that can be put out through the community. We'll continue our measurement process on an annual basis. We'll continue with our annual report. You can expect to see the measurement annex and all the data on a regular basis from us. But we'll also be partnering with others to ensure that we're pushing out information that comes from other processes as well. Okay. So this next graphic represents a wide range of stakeholders that are working as part of the FP 2020 movement to achieve our shared goal of reaching the 120 million additional women and girls. So these include a wide network of folks, and I suspect there's somebody from pretty much any spot on this this map here on the phone with us today, which is very exciting. We currently have more than 80 commitment makers to FP 2020 who've made specific pledges. That includes 39 countries, which is an expansion over the 24 who made original pledges during the London Summit. So the interest in countries in this platform continues to grow, which is very exciting. Over the last few months, Afghanistan, Laos, and Vietnam made commitments, which is a really great opportunity that came through the Bali conference. We had an expansion into the Asia region and was a really great opportunity to get to know more of our counterparts in those countries. So the enthusiasm around joining this platform and exploring together what can be done through collaboration continues to be, I think, a really vital and rich opportunity. We will maintain our reference group. We're also maintaining our performance monitoring and evidence working group that will drive the FP 2020 measurement agenda, and the Secretariat will continue to function as well. And that's where we're seeing some of the biggest change, because over the last 6 months, we've really expanded the technical capacity here at the Secretariat to be stronger partners with those in the field as we've moved away from our working group structure. Okay, so expert advisory community. I wanted to give you a brief overview of what we're expecting from this community and why it is that we are launching this. So again, one of the exciting things, especially sitting here at the Secretariat and working with all of you around the world, one of the exciting things to feel is that incredible enthusiasm for the opportunity to collaborate through this platform. We really felt that at the Bali conference, where we heard a number of partners talking about what the FP 2020 opportunity has meant within their specific context. And in moving away from a working group structure, we didn't want to lose the opportunity to continue this really broad collaboration with all of you. So our idea about how we might move forward together was to create this community so that we could maintain contact with you, sharing information that we're seeing here from the Secretariat level about work that's happening both globally and specific country level work as well. And we also very critically want to maintain an opportunity to hear from you as well, so that we're having this two-way communication where you're letting us know about things that are happening in the field, and you're also then available to partner with us on an as-needed basis to be problem solvers and to really support the work of our country counterparts as they're coming across some issues that could use some thought partners or some specific input from a wider range of really thinkers around these critical issues. So that was sort of the impetus behind creating the expert advisory community. So how it is that we expect to work with you is, again, that we will be letting you know about our efforts, our strategies and approaches, and engaging in conversations with you about how we can be most effective. We'll hope that you can review and provide feedback on challenges that we're facing and that we're seeing across the movement. And again, that you'll help to play a critical role as technical experts in evaluating our outputs, activities, policies, and programs. And again, we also see you as being sort of the global eyes and ears on the ground that can help bring up issues and let us know when we're seeing sort of similarities of issues in different contexts that we can really do some problem solving on together. So in terms of the structure of the expert advisory community, we're expecting that this group will be somewhere between 100 and 150 members that are composed of family planning experts with significant experience in key areas of family planning program implementation. This would include rights and advocacy folks, people who have really great knowledge on CIPs, those who are really expert in commodity security issues. We previously had a working group on market dynamics, but one significant outcome of our strategic review was that we've stepped away from that as a global issue, recognizing the critical role that the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition plays in that space, and instead we'll be focusing more on specific commodity security issues in a country context. So I know there's a great deal of expertise for people on the line within that important sector, and we'll be hoping to partner with you, again, with some problem solving when we encounter things on a country-specific basis. We also expect that this group then would grow as needed. We're all launching this together with you, so we expect that we'll do some shifting and some changing over time as we try to figure out what would be the best use of your time and the most effective way to partner with you to do this problem solving for our partners who are working sort of in the trenches of family planning. So again, in terms of how the group is comprised, we're hoping to reach out again to a broad spectrum of people, and you see that on this slide, where we've invited our members from the Performance Monitoring and Evidence Working Group, our data folks, to be a partner in this endeavor as well, and they'll certainly be doing that. We have alumni from our Market Dynamics, Rights and Empowerment, and Country Engagement Working Groups who've been invited to join. We also have invited those people who applied to be members of the working group. Many of you know that last spring, last May or so, as we were just about to launch the strategic review, it was also the time to initiate the rotation of our working group members. So we launched that process, even though we didn't end up following through with it because we didn't keep most of the reference or the working groups. We just the one on performance monitoring and data. So those people who had applied to be a member of those working groups because of their stated interest in FP 2020, we've invited many of those colleagues to join us on this call today, see if they would be interested in joining this expert advisory community instead. So we're hoping that many will. During the strategic review, we also pulled together a technical advisory group of some very senior level and expert people in our field to be our sort of touch point during that process. So we've invited those people who helped us with the strategic review to join as well. We also have representatives from civil society, from NGOs, academia, governments, foundations, and the private sector. as well as youth advocates and implementers, and we'll be inviting others based on need as we move forward in creating this together. So how will we communicate with all of you? Again, you'll be participating based on your availability and your interest in any given work area. We anticipate engaging with all of you in some very specific ways, though, and one of the commitments that we want to make to you is that we'll create an opportunity on a quarterly basis for a briefing, where we will be sharing with you through a webinar the issues that we've been working on or the things that we've been seeing over that last quarter. Again, these are open webinars for all of you to opt into, but we wanted to make sure that you could count on us on at least a quarterly basis to be sharing with you information about the work that we're doing so that we do maintain this relationship where you're hearing from us as a starting point. We'll also be sharing as needed updates on outcomes of work or to announce upcoming discussions that address specific challenges or specific areas of work. We'll be making targeted requests to activate individual members of the community around urgent situations. And we'll be having focus group discussions with selected members and the Secretariat to solicit advice and support as we see, sort of a need or an opportunity arising. And then as we hear from you, we'll also be pulling together conversations or creating opportunities for people to join those conversations again around specific issues. And we're hoping to do this in a way that doesn't overwhelm your inboxes, but rather creates, again, specific touch points, and then also ask people maybe to join a specific group of people who are working to do some problem solving so that not everybody's working on everything, but that you're available or aware of opportunities as they arise. Okay, so here's this next graphic is about our expert advisory community in action, and this is just to illustrate how we expect this sort of flow of work to go. So again, we would see an issue being identified by either a focal point or an in-country partner or even a member of the expert advisory community. Then we would hope that the partner would flag an issue for the Secretariat, and a member of the Secretariat would reach out to all of you, the EAC, for assistance with the issue to be identified, that had been identified. This outreach, again, could take two forms. If, for example, the issue has to do with a particular in-country issue, we may choose to reach out to a select group of members who have indicated expertise working in that country or on the specific issue. Otherwise, the Secretary might notify the full EAC that an issue has been raised and ask for members to provide feedback. Once a group of interested individuals have been identified, then we'll do the problem solving. We'll work together, maybe set up a conference call or work together via email to try and work through whatever that issue is. So we'll be making those decisions together about what would be the most effective way to communicate and support our partners in doing this problem solving. So once recommendations have been formalized, then we'll work with that specific group, and we'll provide that update back to the EAC once we've worked through a problem about how that worked and lessons learned and what's different as a result of the contributions of the EAC. So again, areas where we expect that we might be working together are in support of technical assistance partners, supporting governments to identify high-impact practices, and supporting the developing of advocacy strategies. At this point, though, I'd like to introduce you to one of the Secretariat's newest members, and many of you know her very well. It's Sandra Jordan, who's recently joined as our Director for Global Advocacy, Rights, and Youth. And in this position, Sandra spearheads FP 2020's engagement with these critical sectors and plays a leadership role in executing FP 2020 strategy for 2016 to 2020. Again, many of you have worked with Sandra over the years, but by way of short introduction, Sandra brings many years of experience working with organizations such as USAID, the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, and NARAL. And most recently, Sandra served as the Senior Technical Advisor for Communications and Outreach at USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health. So as the lead of a key portfolio, which will be leveraging, we really hope, the expertise of the expert advisor community, I'd like Sandra to discuss the type of opportunities and challenges that she envisions for EAC members. So with that, over to you, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Beth. I appreciate it. And as usual, Beth is very concise and informative, and I kind of wave my arms when I talk, but we will get through this together. I wanted to show we've got two examples of ways that we think we can work together, and this is just to kind of start people thinking about how you might want to be additive or where you might have a role and such. Both of these examples do come from Southeast Asia. Do know we are in Africa and other regions and other countries, so don't find yourself just to the thinking around the country. I feel like particularly in terms of rights and empowerment, because we're talking about youth issues, we're talking about women's access, that it's hugely important to understand the context within the country. So I'm very interested when we talk about protect, respect, and fulfill amongst ourselves in Washington or in London, that we also know how it is spoken about in Karen or in Dar or in Bangkok and places like that. So I think we need that kind of input in this working group so that we all better understand how to view this locally and in context within the cultural traditions and such. I think we need to borrow from our colleagues in the gender community that work on changing social norms so that we can pave the way for more women, girls, boys, and men to be engaged in family planning decisions and in access to programs and services and contraception. And I think we need to rely very heavily on civil society to help. The grass tops are very important. It's good to have that political will, but if we don't have the grassroots coming up to help make these things happen, you don't have the same success. So I think I can envision doing a lot of outreach to find out the folks that you think in your community or in your country could be best to help us create an action team around a certain issue to help advance women's rights and youth in our country, implementation plans, to work on toolkits to help advocates understand areas for intervention, and those kinds of things. I just feel like in this case, and we are talking about sometimes changing how countries think about women and their rights and their access to family planning. We are talking about normative changes. And so I think it needs all of our heads working together on this. So again, in this slide in Myanmar, it gives you some examples of kind of, here's the state of the state, as it were, and here are the partners there. How do we work with them? How do we help them? How do we reach out to Pathfinder or WHO to see what kinds of materials they need, see where the weak spots are, see how we can bring the rights, empowerment, and youth issues into getting the evidence and the performance measurement, and into the country engagement and getting kind of that change that will help make the country pledges more realer, and those kinds of things. So I see huge opportunity, and it's going to take, to play on words, a global village to do this. So I thank you for all of this. The second slide, again, is in Bangladesh, and it's about knowledge sharing. And I think this is also an extraordinarily important part of the work that we're trying to do, which is simply helping countries create the way forward for themselves and the way they choose to do it, and whether we need expertise focusing on youth in particular, or on women's rights in particular, or there are advocacy needs, or just some plain informational needs and such. I think just from looking at all of the people that applied for rights and empowerment, and I could turn no one away because I need each and every individual, that their expertise that was in the application, I can just see putting together networks of people to kind of grapple with a particular issue, maybe at a regional basis or on a technical basis, or just kind of have a general conversation around, for example, Bangladesh and good ways forward and such. So I may clutter your box a little bit, but you can always tell me to stop. But I just see so much opportunity and so much that we can all do together, and I really look forward to working with you. So thank you for your interest, and I thank you for your assistance.
Great. Thanks, Sandra. for those of you who know Sandra, you know why I'm so excited that she's joined the Secretariat. We're just going to, I think, have a really great time exploring this opportunity together, and we're very excited to be working with all of you and hope that you'll be available to join us in this endeavor. So with that, we will go to the Q&A, but before we do that, I just wanted to mention that if you decide that you would like to become a member of the EAC, we ask that you opt in by Thursday, April 7th. This is an update from the instructions that you received in your invitation from the email. We had a delay in hosting this webinar, so we wanted to push back that date to give you plenty of time to consider this as well. We'll also be sharing this presentation, webinar recording, and instructions for opting in an email following the webinar. And lastly, we don't plan on having sort of a terms of reference for the EAC. We see this as being it's just really a sort of fluid relationship that we'll explore together. If you feel that we would benefit from that, if it feels a little too loosey-goosey, then we can certainly reconsider that at a later date. But really, we wanted this to be a fluid conversation between us here at the Secretariat with all of you, and again, that we would be building this together. So we certainly want to hear from you about how this might work best. This was our idea about how to organize it, but we recognize that it'll probably need some adjustment as we move it forward. So if you do opt in, please do know that we are hoping to hear from you on that, and that we'll very much value your opinion as well. So with that, we'll move to the Q&A. And I know that we've asked you to submit your questions electronically, so I'm looking to my colleagues to see if we have a first question here to get us started. Okay, so somebody's asked if there's a process through which members are rotated on and off of the EAC. Are there minimum standards of engagement that EAC members are held to? And does the Secretariat hope to incorporate fresh perspectives or voices over time? So again, in setting this, we set the number at approximately 100 to 150, recognizing that that was basically the number of people that we had been working with already through our working groups. Also brought in then the opportunity for those who had applied from our technical advisory group. And then we wanted to open it up so that we would create space for new relationships and also for the at least some touch points that are connected to networks as well. So we see that number as being around 100 to 150, so it can actually be operational around some smaller groups. If, in fact, there's an expansion of that, then we'll consider the options, whether that's really, what's the benefit of making it bigger or smaller. Again, this is an opt-in, work as you can kind of opportunity, so we won't be giving you a grade or tracking your engagement with us. If you are somebody who wants to just come to the quarterly webinars and hear about that work, and then you feel that's useful for your work and it allows you to move forward in a productive way, then that to us is a great outcome. But we do want to make sure that we also have people who are available to do that sort of partnering and problem solving as well. So at this point, we're not going to be sort of adjudicating it and pulling members in and out based on performance, but we'll just leave it open for communication and see where that gets us over the next 6 to 12 months, and maybe do a reevaluation at that point based on how productive the process has been. Okay, so our next question is around rights and empowerment. And during the Rights and Empowerment Working Group, we had a closeout call with that group of colleagues who had been so terrific in terms of partnering with us on that issue over the first 3 years of FP 2020. And there was a suggestion that was made to form a subgroup within the EAC around issues of rights and empowerment. So this question is asking if we're considering creating a standing rights subgroup, and if so, what sorts of issues do we foresee bringing to that group? So Sandra, I'm going to turn to you for that one.
Okay. There will be a standing subgroup simply because I think everybody that is engaged in family planning around the world is engaged in thinking about women's rights and youth, and so you're all part of it, whether you've agreed to be or not. So we need to start looking for solutions together, finding new ways forward together, and to be able to kind of pull and draw on each other, which I've been part of this community for at least 700 years, and we've always been very good about sharing knowledge and expertise and thinking and pushing back against each other so that we get to a better place. So I really, really look forward to this community doing that. And again, there could be very specific issues, for instance, right around Myanmar, which is a fledgling country now coming out of some bad times. And so how, that approach is going to be very different than what we might do in Kenya or Latin America or places like that. So I kind of welcome people to come to the table with their ideas, with their challenges, with gaps in programming, and for us to all kind of sit down together and figure out how we do this either globally or locally.
Great. Thanks, Sandra. We were just asked if somebody has opted in, whether or not they have to opt in again. The answer is no. Once you're in, unless you tell us you want to opt out. So we'll go forward with that training model. I think that should work for everybody. Another question came in about whether or not the rapid response mechanism would be continued. For those who don't know, we have a small grants fund. It's called the Rapid Response Mechanism, and that absolutely will be continuing. It's been pretty successful in terms of partnering for country-specific goals to support sort of urgent action. The framework around the RM is that it's not set up to fill that sort of vast need of ongoing work to provide family planning, but really to be available to respond to unique opportunities or urgent needs. So a good example of a successful program is that Mali, in their CIP, stated that they wanted to expand access to LARCs. So we partnered with MSI in Mali to do some training of trainers so that they could roll out LARCs more extensively across the country. So again, it was a one-off thing, but it really filled a critical need and allowed Mali then, we hope, to expand access to a wider range of services that women are going to be needing. So that kind of thing. We also do some policy work. I think it was in Bolivia, there was an opportunity where the government was considering expanding the legal framework around reproductive health and family planning in particular. So we were able to fund an outreach program for education to parliamentarians. We can't do lobbying, but we can support an education campaign. So that work was done in advance of that policy dialogue, which is still ongoing, but again, it was a critical moment. So if that helps frame in your mind the kinds of things that we're looking at, we very much will be continuing with the RRM. And